Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, we're finally seeing the culmination of two events we've been forecasting now for at least the last week and a half, and it's the cutoff low that's been moving here over parts of New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma, spreading an historic ice storm with a blizzard on the backside, and then Hurricane Zeta, which yesterday evening as the sun was setting finally made landfall right here, and is going to move very quickly toward the mid-Atlantic throughout the day today. Well, as this is all taken shape, we've spread snow from Montana here into the central plains of the United States, and also we saw the fire threat we discussed early on Monday. Let me put this in motion and show you how everything evolved as the sun was setting last night. So we're going to pause it right here. Our deep cutoff low, once again, putting down some heavy snow in this area, heavy rain out to the east of it, and a lot of very cold air that was getting wrapped into Zeta. But Zeta was on the move, and you'll see as I play this the rest of the way that it moves very quickly in the overnight hours, such that early this morning it's already covered most of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Meanwhile, on the backside, you can see the smoke from the wildfires that are still plaguing this part of the Sierra Nevada into the Central Valley, and that was after those strong Santa Ana winds hit Southern California. So letting this play on through, look at how quickly Zeta moves here through Alabama into Georgia in the early morning hours. So this is before the sun was rising, so we're looking here at infrared temperatures. Over the last 72 hours, here's our total accumulated precipitation, and there are some pockets of very heavy rainfall and also some heavy snow on the backside. But I'd like to show you a couple of videos here. The first one's coming out of Southern California. With those strong Santa Ana winds that we saw earlier this week, I just want to let other folks around the country who have never experienced this see what it's like to be in the presence of those incredibly dry winds, spreading forest fires, and also doing a lot of damage here. Speaking of damage, let's now come to the historic ice storm that has hit parts of Texas and really hit Oklahoma very hard, where we were finding ice measurements well in excess of 1.5 inches. The video that's over here on the left shows you some of the weight of the ice on the trees, which many of them still have their leaves, of course, which is why we've seen so much damage. And the power outages, a lot of them have been because of this. Here you can see this particular power line arcing as the weight of the ice pushes the trees down on top of them. Now from there, take a look at the video that's in the upper right. This has been another problem. With all of the leaves on the trees, the weight of the ice has just been destroying the trees. And this guy went out, I think, to check on things, and watch the end here. We've seen damage like this from all over this part of Oklahoma, and we're going to be spending several weeks cleaning up after this. But when I look at this impact on ag, we did return finally some moisture to the southern plains of the United States, and it's been a long time since we've been seeing anything like that. Well, what I've got for you next here is I want to show you the snowfall. We've added quite a bit of snow right here into the panhandles over the last 12 hours, another 6 inches in places. But heavy snows on the back side of this, and they did over the last 72 hours spread some light snow in here in parts of the Central Plains over toward the Midwest. But putting it all together, here's our radar animation from yesterday into early this morning. We can see Hurricane Zeta moving into the warm sector out ahead of the deep upper level low that's still going to be spinning here over the next 48 hours out of Oklahoma, finally moving its way into the Ohio River Valley. Now today, what I'm concerned about is going to be the strong winds around both of these systems. We have high wind warnings that are out here from parts of Georgia getting into South Carolina and North Carolina, wrapping into Zeta through mid-morning. And then on the backside, these winds are going to continue to cause damage with all of the ice that's still on the trees here in parts of Oklahoma, and expecting strong winds to push all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. And this will not be the end of the wind threat we have over the next few days. I'll come back to that in just a few moments. So our all hazards weather map. High wind advisories and warnings in these regions here. We see that Hurricane Zeta has extended the tropical storm force wind warnings clear into this part of the Appalachian Mountains. We're going to be watching flooding in through here and flooding here through the mid-Atlantic. On the backside of this, air quality alerts here, including a high wind watch that's in this part of Montana. So that's our all hazards weather map through the day today. So taking a look at the operational NAM model, or high resolution model, I just want to show you. This is 6 a.m. this morning. Watch how quickly this all evolves. You see, we're going to see the upper level low spreading rain here from Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri into the Ohio River Valley. But Zeta by mid-morning, early morning through mid-morning is going to go from the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee and North Carolina all the way through Virginia. Ready? So this is 6 a.m. This is now noon. It's already moved quickly through here. Strong winds out ahead of it. Heavy rain when moving right in through this area of Virginia. But look at the shield of rain that's going to be spreading here into the northeast. At that time, we still see the scattered showers back here on the backside through the Ohio River Valley over toward the Ozarks. And as I play this through, this is this afternoon. Getting into this evening, it's going to move on off to the northeast. A little clipper system comes through, bringing some light snow out of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, into parts of North Dakota, Minnesota. And I don't want you to be surprised if in the overnight hours and in the early morning we do get some snow here in this part of Pennsylvania, New York, getting into the northeast, something we saw earlier in the week. But just notice, by the time I get you through Friday midday, Zeta, the cutoff low, are out. And much of the United States is going to get a bit of a break from weather systems, at least those producing precipitation here in the next few days. So the next 72 hours through Saturday night, this is what we're looking at across the country in terms of total accumulated precipitation. Some of the stuff you see there coming through Canada will be snow, but overall, that is what we're looking at. I want to zoom in and take a closer look at what's happening over the southeast, just again, the next 72 hours. Because in this part of the Ohio River Valley, southern Indiana through Ohio and back into southern Illinois, we could be seeing a region in through here that picks up still another 1.5 to 2 inches of rainfall. The northern edge of this will be a difficult boundary to follow, so keep a close eye on where the edge of that rainfall comes through. Again, through the Appalachian Mountains here, getting into parts of the mid-Atlantic, this is going to be a widespread 1 to 3 inch rainfall event. But notice another hard edge here, getting into North Carolina, South Carolina, where we may have some scattered storms that hit down here in parts of Georgia and South Carolina, and we do have a tornado watch early this morning in this part of Georgia. But you can see here relatively lighter amounts. The models picked up on that boundary very, very well earlier in this week. In terms of snowfall, again, we're watching this early this morning. This is tomorrow morning. Here's the clipper that comes through, bringing in maybe 1 to 2 inches into this area, and the other low cutting through here, possibly bringing quite a bit more snow north of Highway 16 in Canada. It's going to be the pattern, though, that we have to spend some time discussing, and this is what I really want you to see here. As I play this forward, watch. There's Zeta, there's our cutoff low, and they go quickly. This is now tomorrow afternoon. What I'm going to be watching as we work our way into the weekend is going to be this trough sweeping through out of parts of Saskatchewan into Manitoba into the northern plains of the U.S. This is Saturday evening. And by the time we work our way into the weekend, that's going to bring some cold air through the Great Lakes and sweep it in early next week across the East Coast. And I'll explain in a few moments how far to the south I'm expecting a frost, because I'm concerned about the western Piedmont getting down here into the northern parts of Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. But behind it, look at the size of this ridge. This is going to be bringing in, for much of next week, drier and warmer conditions after that trough cuts through. But as the pattern really flattens out due to much deeper lows that are going to be moving through this part of the Arctic, well, the pattern is going to be boring in the midsection of the country. And boring is very good right now, but this is what I'm going to be watching carefully. November 5th, 6th, 7th, this is a highly amplified pattern once again coming out of the western part of North America. Ridge builds into Alaska, and it's going to be the position of this trough which will be most challenging to forecast. Models keep moving it around, sometimes further inland, sometimes here along the coast. Now, why this is important is the farther west this goes, the better the chances are for precipitation in California, which is about 45 days late on the start of their normal seasonal rainfall. But you can imagine that if that trough sets up there, my concern will again be, does it cut off? In other words, does the flow go over this ridge and just join up here with this next ridge over the Great Lakes, leaving this to sit and spin and slowly move through the United States again? That's going to be my big concern. Now, to show you what the operational models are doing in terms of precip, let's just play this forward. Pause it there because we have already seen through Friday evening. Now, what we notice is, working our way through the day on Saturday, Halloween, here comes our clipper system. That's going to cut right through parts of Manitoba, getting over here into Ontario and northern snow. But behind or south of it, front's going to come through, but not much moisture to work with. What's going to be happening here in the central United States is very windy conditions on Halloween. As we play this forward, this is now getting into the evening, then into Sunday morning. Now, as that comes through parts of the Great Lakes states, we could see very, very windy conditions in the overnight hours on Saturday through Sunday here in the Great Lakes states. Rain out ahead of it, snow on the backside through parts of Michigan. Big area of high pressure moves into the Central Plains. Now, as we go forward from Sunday into Monday morning, that high pressure cell comes in, and that's what's going to usher in the cold weather across the east. I'll show you that in a few moments. But watch this. After that goes through, here goes Monday. now into Tuesday, Wednesday, and out to Thursday of next week. Now that's a quieter time period where the temperatures are going to rebound here in the midsection of the country. But remember, it's now the 5th, 6th, and 7th that I'm watching this event coming out of British Columbia into the West Coast. And it's going to be critical to see where that goes. So out there to day 10, the operational model shows this. Look at this highly amplified pattern, okay? The ensemble, the European ensemble, has almost very similar flow, which gives me more confidence in this. What I want to know is, will this trough really be anchored here, or could it possibly be farther to the west or farther to the east? That will be the trend we'll have to watch over the weekend. But still, if the flow comes out of this trough right here like this into the central United States, this is good upper level support in this area for clouds and precipitation. And we see that that lasts possibly to the middle of the month of November. Now, what does this mean in terms of precip and temperatures? Well, precip first. Wetter conditions in through here. That's the GFS. You see the European showing a similar pattern. What is the big question mark for me will be the West Coast. Again, it's how far west that trough goes. And don't forget, we still have the wild card in the tropics because we're still watching more systems develop out of the Caribbean. You see, here goes Zeta in the European ensemble forecast, but notice that the models are continuing to pick up on the development of low pressure in the Caribbean. Now, I can also see it by watching where the model by day 10 is trying to produce the low pressure. So I just want to let you know that over the weekend, I want you to be watching what's happening in the Caribbean for more tropical development, because systems that come out of here this time of year tend to take a track something like this. So we'll watch it carefully as we go through the month of November. Now, what's helping this along is the fact that the MJO, which spent 45 days here over in phase 4 or 5, has now come out and is sitting here in phase 6. Now, the possible position of the MJO moving forward is going to look something like this, I think. Does it collapse back into null space or stay out here in 7, 8, and 1? If it does that, notice what we end up getting. Here, over the next 15 days, these cooler colors represent better upward motion in the atmosphere over parts of South America, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Western Atlantic. This is what keeps our hurricane potential development, our development potential higher over the next 15 days. But there's more to that story than just that. Here it is in map form really quickly just to show you that's where we have our best upward motion as the MJO resets over here toward Africa and the sinking motion is tucked away in the midsection here of the Pacific Ocean. Now, what I think this means in terms of our temperatures is this. The MJO now moving is kind of taking over as the more dominant feature in the tropics. There's still our La Niña, which we've been talking about, but the MJO moving is finally a different signal. So what I want to show you here is if it does come out, again, these are the possibilities that I'm thinking. If it does come out and go through phase 7, 8, 1, and 2, well, phase 7 would be the phase we're going to be seeing in the near term, and you saw the colder air coming through like this. Phase 8 is where the jet stream is going to retreat north, and we generally don't have a strong temperature signal during phase 8 in the month of November. But if it goes over into phase 1 and 2, that's where we could help the jet stream by repositioning the MJO, pull that colder air out of the Pacific Northwest, out of the western part of Canada, into the middle part of the United States. In other words, the jet stream behavior I just explained to you with the trough ridge pattern is lining up well with the behavior of the MJO. From there, let's talk temperatures. First, highs. Remember, on these maps, the numbers represent that forecasted high. The color coding tells us what we're expecting in terms of the difference from normal. So here we go. This is Friday. Let's watch that again. Here we go. Pause it there. This is now Friday, working our way into Saturday and Sunday. Now remember, on Sunday, this is where we expect that next trough to start to dig through, and it's going to push toward the east on Monday. And we're going to talk about the frost threat here in the overnight lows in a moment. But look at the rebound of temperatures across the west as this pattern flattens out. Because as you go from Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday, widespread warmth compared to this time of year spreading across the country. Now, in terms of those overnight lows, here is the early morning lows this morning. Playing this through the weekend, this is now Friday, getting into Saturday and Sunday. Now, what I'm concerned about on Saturday, here's where our frost line is going to be setting up. As we go into Sunday, a brief moderation as the next round of cold air comes into this area, which we may be seeing some 20s and even teens here in the northern plains. But watch what happens as we go from Sunday into Monday. You see that the extent currently forecast by the National Digital Forecast Database of the frost line, shown to you in white, gets down pretty far to the south. And I'm concerned on Tuesday morning for that to be getting into parts of Virginia and the western Piedmont of North Carolina. This is an area I'm watching carefully because it would be the first frost, and there are some crops here that are a bit late due to some very inclement weather early in this season that delayed planting. So we'll watch that carefully. But one thing's for sure, the pattern relaxing in the day 5 through 10, you can see it. Look at the warmth spreading here. And here's all that cold air races back toward the north. But as we saw, the reset, both timed with the MJO and that trough coming out of the western part of North America, well, this is the day 10 through 15. That's the latest GFS, and there it is in the European. And that highly amplified pattern, which we've been talking about here, is going to keep the East Coast warm and unsettled weather likely in the midsection of the United States. Now from there, extending this out into the middle part of November, we see that the latest extended GFS forecast wants to keep that being the pattern and moving it farther to the east, which would support the MJO not collapsing back into null space. But we have to talk about that possibility, and here's why. If the MJO does do that and collapses back into null space and comes back out into 4-5, well, phase 4 and 5 are dry phases for South America. But if it stays through phase 7, 8, and 1, we tend to get, well, in phase 8 and 1, much wetter conditions here across Brazil's major growing areas. And that's critical for Brazil right now. You can see that the model over the next week is favoring heavier rainfall in this area, and I'm expecting planting pace to really continue to pick up in this area. It'll be dry in Argentina, dry in parts of southern Brazil and Uruguay over the next week. But what this will likely do is continue our upward trend here in planting progress over the next couple of weeks. We are still about 2 weeks behind where we should be, with only about 25% planted early this week. We should be somewhere around 50% in Brazil with getting those soybeans in. But as we go into week 2, the models are suggesting a bit of a back off here in the precipitation, not only in this part of Brazil, but also in Argentina, with a wetter corridor right in through here. And again, I think this is going to be tied very closely to what the MJO does, and it's going to be a trend worth watching over the next few days. From there, I'd like to share with you some of the latest information I have from the IRI group out of Columbia University. What we've already talked about is with this La Niña forecast to peak this December, that the area we're going to watch most carefully will be southern Brazil and Argentina for drought development. What I'm going to be researching over the next couple of weeks is what could shut down the moisture in March and April in middle part of Brazil. Because if we do delay the soybeans, which we've done, and they don't come out on time, that delays the planting of safrinha corn and cotton. Now, by the time we get to March and April, if anything slows down the monsoon, we will not have adequate moisture for grain fill for that second crop. And I'm trying to study that and understand it. You see, the European model is also dry here and here for December, January, February, with a wet corridor in between. So our concern as we go into the beginning of the season, December, January, February, is going to be in Argentina. But what about February, March, and April? That's where my concern begins to shift back into this area. And the latest European model forecast, which are going to get a brand new update at the beginning of November, does still give me question marks in this area about what the precipitation will be doing at the end of their safrinha crop. And I'll be researching it and presenting it back to you. I do have one last thing I'd like to bring up, and that is what's going on over in Europe. Over the last 45 days, we've been discussing how this part of the Russian wheat belt over here in eastern Ukraine and southern Russia has been very dry. I just want to point out that with the shift in the pattern over North America, the North Atlantic, and therefore over Europe, we have the potential for bringing in this area between a half an inch and an inch of rainfall in parts of the Russian wheat belt that have been drought stricken. And with the warmer temperatures there, this is going to be seen, I guess, as favorable for the crop in that area as we progress through the month of November. Okay, that's where I want to finish this up. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks.